The space station Horizon Gate floated like a jewel in the black sea of space. It was built as a meeting point for many species, a place where fragile peace was tested every day. Tall towers reached out into the void, glowing with light from human and alien designs mixed together. Markets sold food no single race could understand. Soldiers, diplomats, and travelers moved through the long corridors, each carrying pride and suspicion in equal measure. Lieutenant Daniel Cross stood near the docking bay, his hand pressed nervously against the rail. He was a young officer in the United Terran Fleet, chosen to help represent humanity at the Council. Daniel was known among his crew not for his bravery or fighting skill, but for his clumsy jokes and nervous charm. Some liked him for it, others shook their heads. Today, he had been ordered to greet Lady Koresh of the Valari Empire. The Valari were a tall, warrior species with skin like polished stone, and eyes that glowed faintly under the station lights. They believed strength was the greatest virtue. Their society respected warriors above all else. For them, honor was life. To show weakness was shame. Daniel had read reports about them, but reading and meeting were not the same. When Lady Koresh stepped into the bay, surrounded by her armored guards, Daniel's heart skipped. She wore silver battle plates decorated with sharp patterns. Her posture was perfect, her gaze like a blade cutting through the air. Daniel swallowed. "All right, just be polite," he whispered to himself. The translator device on his wrist hummed, ready to carry his words into the Valari tongue. He straightened his jacket, smiled, and spoke the first words that came to his mind. "You're so gorgeous," he said. The guards froze. The air felt heavy. For one moment, nobody moved. Then Lady Koresh's eyes narrowed. A flush of crimson moved across her pale stone-like skin, like heat spreading on marble. With a sudden motion, she raised her hand and slapped him across the face. The sound echoed in the docking bay. Daniel staggered back, his cheek burning with pain. He blinked in surprise, holding his face with one hand. His thoughts spun wildly. What just happened? The guards looked ready to draw their blades. The nearby human officers stiffened, waiting for his reaction. But Daniel, instead of anger, let out a short laugh. Not loud, not mocking, just a strange, almost helpless chuckle. "Ow," he muttered, rubbing his cheek. Guess that didn't translate right. Everyone stared. Valari culture expected one thing: rage. A warrior insulted would strike back with force. To not fight was weakness, to laugh was madness. But Daniel simply stood there, smiling nervously with a red mark on his cheek. Lady Koresh studied him, her hand still trembling slightly from the strike. The blush on her skin did not fade. It was true. She had felt something strange in his words, something that made her react with both anger and confusion. But she would never admit such feelings before her guards. "You insult me," she said coldly, though her voice carried hesitation. Daniel raised his hands gently, palms open, showing no threat. "No insult meant, Lady Koresh. I was trying to give a compliment. In human culture, calling someone gorgeous is a good thing." The translator repeated his words in Valari tones, but they sounded odd, almost clumsy. The guards shifted uncomfortably, not sure whether to believe him. "You are strange," Lady Koresh said at last. Daniel lowered his hands, still rubbing his cheek. "That's fair," he admitted with a crooked grin. The human officers behind him whispered nervously, unsure whether this disaster could turn into war. But Daniel stayed calm even though his heart was racing. He decided not to explain further. Sometimes words only made fire worse. Instead, he stood quietly, letting the silence hang. This silence itself was unusual. Valari warriors always pressed forward, always demanded answers. Daniel's quietness made them uneasy. Lady Koresh finally turned, her silver armor shining as she walked toward the council chamber. She did not call for his punishment, not yet. But her guards gave Daniel long, sharp looks as they followed her. When they were gone, one of Daniel's fellow officers hissed at him. "What were you thinking? You just called a Valari war leader weak and soft." Daniel blinked. "I did? Yes," the officer whispered harshly. "In their culture, beauty is connected with fragility. You basically said she looks breakable." Daniel winced. "Oh, well, that explains the slap." But even as he said it, he smiled faintly. His cheek still hurt, but something about the moment felt strange. He had seen Lady Koresh's eyes. For 1 second before the slap, she had looked uncertain, almost shy. The rumor spread quickly across Horizon Gate. By the next hour, aliens of every race were whispering. The human officer insulted Lady Koresh, and she struck him, but he did not fight back. He laughed instead. Some said he was weak. Some said he was foolish. But others began to wonder, what kind of species could endure such humiliation with humor? What kind of people could turn a blow into a joke? In the council hall, Lady Koresh sat in silence, her mind returning again and again to the moment. His words echoed, translated or not, carrying meaning she did not understand. Why would a warrior race compliment their rivals? Why would a man smile after being struck? For the first time in many years, Lady Koresh felt uncertain. And in that uncertainty, humanity had planted its first seed in the heart of the Valari. The story of Daniel's mistake spread like fire through Horizon Gate. Every market, every bar, every council hall whispered about the human officer who had dared speak strange words to Lady Koresh. Some called him foolish, others weak, and a few curious voices called him brave. But the Valari Council could not ignore the event. To them, a slap was not the end. An insult demanded balance. Lady Koresh herself remained silent, but her people pressed for action. Finally, the council declared, Lieutenant Daniel Cross must face a trial of honor. When Daniel received the news, he sat in silence for a long moment. The words echoed in his mind. Trial of honor, he had read about such things. It was not simply a fight. It was a public test, a way for Valari to prove their worth through strength, skill, or death. His fellow officers tried to protest, but the council's decision was final. Humanity was still new to the station, and refusing the trial would mean shame for Earth. Daniel had no choice. The night before the trial, Daniel sat alone in his small cabin, staring at his reflection. His cheek was still faintly marked from the slap, a reminder of how this all began. He thought of his family back home, of his crew, of Lady Koresh's sharp eyes. Fear pressed at him, but he refused to let it drown him. All right, he whispered to himself. If I can't be the strongest, I'll just have to be the cleverest. The trial of honor was held in the Hall of Blades, a grand arena inside the station built by Valari engineers. The floor was wide, the walls covered in banners of past victories. Crowds of aliens gathered, filling the high seats, their voices buzzing with excitement. In the center of the arena stood Daniel, dressed not in heavy armor, but in his simple fleet uniform. He carried no great weapon, only a light staff offered by the Valari attendants. His heart raced, but he forced a calm smile onto his face. Across from him stepped his challenger, a Valari warrior named Torvek, chosen by the council. Torvek was taller than Daniel by 2 heads, his body covered in black armor edged with steel. His weapon was a long spear that gleamed under the lights. The announcer's voice rang through the hall. Honor is tested this day. The human stands accused of insult. He will prove his worth in trial. If he falls, his shame is eternal. If he stands, his honor is his. The crowd roared. Daniel swallowed hard. No pressure. The signal sounded and Torvek charged forward, spear cutting through the air. Daniel barely leapt aside, the weapon missing his chest by an inch. The crowd shouted, some in excitement, others in mockery. Daniel spun his staff, blocking the next strike. The force rattled his arms. He knew he could not match Torvek in strength. Every clash would break him if he tried to fight directly. So he did not fight directly. Instead, Daniel moved quickly, light on his feet. He dodged, rolled, and ducked under heavy strikes. He let the Valari swing and miss, forcing him to waste energy. Each time Daniel escaped, he gave a nervous smile, almost playful. The Valari in the crowd frowned. This was not how a warrior fought. But others leaned forward, curious. Torvek grew angry. Stand and fight, human, he shouted. Daniel panted but grinned. I am fighting, just differently. He tapped his staff against the ground as if teasing. Torvek lunged again, this time faster. But Daniel twisted aside, letting the spear strike the floor.
Sparks flew.
In the same motion, Daniel swung his staff at Torvek's legs. The warrior stumbled, caught off balance for the first time. The crowd gasped. Daniel stepped back quickly, refusing to press the attack. He was not here to kill, only to survive. That alone would be his victory. The fight dragged on. Torvek breathing heavier with each strike. Daniel dodging and deflecting, using the environment to his advantage. At one point, he grabbed a loose chain from the arena wall and used it to swing out of reach. At another, he kicked up dust to block Torvek's vision for a second. The Valari Council watched with mixed expressions. Some sneered, calling it trickery. Others whispered, admiring the cleverness. Lady Koresh, seated at the front, kept her eyes fixed on Daniel, her face unreadable. Finally, Torvik stumbled to his knees, too exhausted to continue. He slammed his spear into the ground, growling in frustration. Enough! The hall fell silent. Daniel stood across from him, chest rising and falling with heavy breath, sweat on his forehead. He raised his staff slowly, not in attack, but in salute. Good fight, he said, his voice calm. Torvik glared at him, but after a moment he lowered his head in reluctant respect. The announcer declared, "The human stands. The trial is complete. Honor is earned." The crowd erupted, half in cheers, half in confusion. Never before had a trial been won in such a way. No killing, no overpowering strike, only endurance, wit, and strange humor. Daniel lowered his staff, relief washing over him. His legs trembled, but he stayed standing. He had survived. Later, in the quiet of the council chamber, Daniel was summoned before the leaders. He expected scolding, perhaps even rejection of his victory, but instead, the council members spoke in hushed voices. "He fights without fighting," one said. "He endures with laughter," another murmured. "Strange," a third admitted, "but worthy." Lady Koresh rose from her seat. Her eyes lingered on Daniel. "You do not fight as we do," she said. "Yet you stand. You do not seek death, yet you do not run. This is unusual, and perhaps honorable." Daniel rubbed the back of his neck, embarrassed. "I'll take unusual over dead any day." For the first time, Lady Koresh's lips curved slightly, not quite a smile, but close. The council announced their final judgment. Daniel Cross, though unorthodox, had proven his honor. Humanity would not be shamed. Instead, the Valari would remember this trial as something new, something different. As Daniel left the chamber, whispers followed him. Some mocked, some admired, but none ignored him. Humanity had shown itself in a new light, and deep in her heart, Lady Koresh felt the faint warmth of the strange words that had started it all. "You're so gorgeous." She did not yet understand them fully, but she remembered the way they had made her blush. The arena was silent now. The echoes of the trial of honor still lingered in the halls of Horizon Gate. For days, people spoke of the strange human who had won not with brute strength, but with cleverness and laughter. Some called it luck. Others whispered it was a sign of something deeper, something that made humans different from every other race. Daniel Cross tried not to think too much about the whispers. His body was sore, his arms bruised, but he had survived. That was enough for him. He spent most of his time resting in the human quarters, answering endless questions from his fellow officers. "Were you scared?" one asked. "Of course," Daniel replied honestly. "Then how did you keep smiling?" another pressed. Daniel shrugged. "Because if I cried, it would only hurt worse." His words made them laugh, but none could deny the truth. One evening, as Daniel sat alone in the quiet observation deck, looking out at the stars, he heard the sound of armored boots behind him. He turned, and there she was, Lady Koresh. Her presence filled the room. She wore no helmet, her silver armor reflecting the starlight. Her sharp eyes studied him with the same intensity as before, but this time there was no anger in them. "Lieutenant Cross," she said. Daniel stood quickly, almost tripping over his chair. "Lady Koresh, hope I'm not in trouble again." Her lips curved slightly, not quite a smile, but something close. "You survived the trial. Few expected that. Even fewer expected you to win with such methods." Daniel rubbed his neck. "Yeah, I'm full of surprises. Though honestly, my cheek still hurts from your slap." For the first time, Lady Koresh gave a short laugh. It was soft, almost hidden, but it reached her eyes. Daniel blinked in surprise. He had never heard a Valari laugh before. "You are a strange man," she said. "Strange, but not weak." Daniel sat back down, motioning awkwardly to the chair beside him. To his surprise, she accepted, sitting with a warrior's grace. For a moment, neither spoke. The stars outside stretched forever, silent witnesses to their meeting. At last, Lady Koresh spoke. "Why did you laugh when I struck you?" Daniel thought for a moment. "Because anger would only make things worse. And fear, well, fear doesn't really help either. Sometimes all you can do is laugh at yourself. It makes the pain smaller." Lady Koresh tilted her head, considering his words. "Among my people, laughter is rare. It is seen as weakness. But when you laughed, it made you stronger. It unsettled even me." Daniel smiled faintly. "Guess humans just see the world differently." The conversation continued. She asked about Earth, about human customs, about why they valued beauty and kindness as much as strength. Daniel answered as best he could, using simple words, sometimes with nervous jokes that made her raise an eyebrow but never turn away. Slowly, something shifted between them. The tension of insult and trial gave way to curiosity, then to respect. At one point, Daniel dared to repeat the words that had caused all this trouble. "You're so gorgeous," Lady Koresh stiffened. Her cheeks glowed faintly with that same crimson blush as before. But this time, instead of striking him, she looked away, almost shy. "In your culture," she said slowly. "Those words are honor?" "In my culture," Daniel said gently. "Those words mean respect, admiration, and sometimes more, but they are never insult." Silence stretched between them. Then Lady Koresh nodded once firmly, as if she had accepted a lesson learned in battle. The next day, when the council gathered again, Lady Koresh spoke before them all. "The human stood in trial," she said.
"He endured not with our strength, but with his own kind of power."
"He does not fight as we do, yet he proved himself worthy." "I will not call him weak again," the council murmured. Some argued, some doubted, but none could deny her voice carried weight. Daniel stood silently at the edge of the chamber, trying not to look too nervous. When Lady Koresh turned her eyes toward him, he gave a small nod. She returned it just barely. From that moment, the Valari view of humans began to shift. They still saw them as small, fragile creatures, but now there was a shadow of doubt in that judgment. Perhaps humans were not simply weak. Perhaps they were dangerous in ways unseen. In the weeks that followed, Daniel and Lady Koresh crossed paths often. Sometimes in council halls, sometimes in the training grounds, sometimes in quiet corners where conversation came easier. He taught her a few human jokes, though most of them confused her. She taught him about Valari duels and honor codes, though he admitted he would probably fail at most of them. They both laughed, which surprised her every time. One evening she asked him, "Why risk speaking to me at all, when you knew so little of my culture?" Daniel grinned. "Because sometimes the only way to learn is to make a mistake, even if it hurts." She stared at him for a long moment, then said softly, "The slap still hurts?" Daniel chuckled, touching his cheek. "A little, but maybe it was worth it." Lady Koresh turned away quickly, hiding the faint blush that returned to her skin. Word of their strange friendship spread through Horizon Gate. Some mocked it, others admired it, but it became a symbol of something greater. Humanity and the Valari, two races so different, had found respect, not through war but through mistake, trial, and laughter. One day, as Daniel prepared to return to his ship, Lady Koresh came to see him off. She stood tall, her silver armor shining, her voice steady. "You are not like us, Daniel Cross," she said, "but perhaps that is what makes you dangerous and admirable." Daniel smiled, saluting her in human fashion. "And you're not like us, Lady Koresh, but maybe that's what makes you gorgeous." Her cheeks warmed again, though she quickly masked it with a stern expression. "Do not push your luck, human." But as he boarded his ship, he could see it, the faintest smile on her lips. And so the story ended not with war, but with something rarer, respect. On Horizon Gate, where peace was fragile and trust even rarer, a single awkward human officer had shown that honor could take many forms. Laughter could be stronger than anger. Cleverness could be sharper than a blade. And even a mistake, painful as it was, could open the path to understanding. For in the end, humanity was more than muscle and machines. They were something no other race could easily understand, something that made them both feared and admired. And somewhere in the halls of the station, Lady Koresh still remembered the words that had once felt like insult, now carrying a different weight. "You're so gorgeous."